So on behalf of ALS, I welcome you to this workshop in anthropology. I'm THIRUMURUGAN. I'm from Tamil Nadu, settled in Bangalore. I have close to around some 14-15 years of experience in teaching anthropology. A wonderful subject. I hope most of you, right, might not have heard the term anthropology during your school days or college days, right? And in the last 10 years or so, right, anthropology as an optional, it's gaining too much of importance in UPSC. You might have heard about this. Every year, right, at least there will be 2 or 3 in top 10. So what exactly the subject is and why it is not so popular? It was popular in the past. During 70s and 80s, right, it was very popular. As it was very popular on UPSC, right, they keep doing one particular thing. If some subject is becoming very popular, and they'll try to pull it down through some way, right? So they did some changes during the late 80s, and they made it difficult for people to study the subject. Once again, right, I still remember in the year 2002 or 3, a few people became topper with anthropology as their optional. One person by name L. Satyaprakash from Karnataka. He got All India second rank, and his optional subject was anthropology. Slowly from that time onwards, right, once again, anthropology as a subject started gaining importance. And in the last 10 years or so, at least there will be at least 2 or 3 in the top 10 who adopted anthropology as an optional. What is this subject? It's something very new, very unique. But how people are choosing this, and it is something so unique, right? There is something interesting about the subject anthropology, first of all. So what is anthropology? Anthropology is the study of man. We say anthropology is the study of man through time and space. We study about ourselves. There are few optionals, right, where people used to get a duck out, 0 mark. Have you heard about any such optional? Mathematics. Every year, right, at least 2 or 3, they will score just 0 in the optional. 0. What is this? Suppose if it is demography optional or sociology, there will be, without even having any idea about the subject, there may be something, right, which we as a common man will be in a position to answer. Suppose if they ask you to write about the caste system, or say media and social change. If they ask you to write about culture, we all are allowed to conserve our culture, right? How many of you want to conserve our culture, and how many say, no, sir, I'm not okay with this culture, we just want to evolve? How many of you want to conserve your own culture? But the very basic aspect of culture is dynamic, and we cannot, nobody can hold the culture at a particular level. Culture keeps evolving. This is one main theme in one good example to show how culture evolves over time. Okay, so first of all, what is culture? Can somebody tell me what exactly you mean by culture? The way of life. Good. Then tell me something about culture, man. We all are here to conserve the culture, right? We have a lot of pride about our own culture. Everything is culture. See, the language which we speak is culture. The dress which we wear is our culture. The food which we eat, right? That is a culture. On the other hand, you might have seen one South Indian hero, great superstar, Rajinikanth. Have you seen him how he used to keep cigarette in his mouth? Just throws it like this, right? During our college days, many guys used to try that a lot. Few what they used to do after lighting the cigarettes, they used to try that. In the process, they hurt themselves. But he is an expert in that, right? Is that a culture? That is not a culture. That is his personal style, that is. So culture means the sum total of knowledge, faith, morals, customs, values, education, etc. Many which we as a member of a society acquire. That is culture. For example, the language which we speak, right? That is our culture. What is your mother tongue? Yeah. Nepali. Your mother tongue? Same Nepali. Your mother tongue? Malayalam. Okay. Malayalam, good. Is it possible for someone, suppose, think that you are Mowgli, the hero of Jungle Book, okay, left inside the jungle alone, all alone, and you are surviving there by yourself. Is it possible for you in your lifetime to make your own language, something like Malayalam, something like Nepali, something like English, make a vocabulary, phonetics, and then to speak that language? It is not possible, right? So your ancestors, maybe if you, how old is Malayalam? No idea. Huh? Oh my God. No man, Malayalam is a Dravidian language. Okay. Kannada, Telugu, Tamil and Malayalam. These four are Dravidian languages. Okay. We cannot say Tamil as the proto-language actually. There was one proto-language from which all these four languages evolved. Okay. Sangam Literature, which is unique to Tamil, right? Sangam Literature is some 2300 years old. In Malayalam, we have literature which dates back to 1400 years. That means from 400 AD, from 500 AD, right? We have some Malayalam literature. So, Malayalam as a language, it is some 1500 years old. So, year after year, generation after generation, right, people enrich the language. Okay, we learn it from our parents, from our ancestors, from our relatives, from our teachers. We keep it with ourselves, we enrich this, and we'll pass it on to the next generation, correct? So, English language. So, we learned it from our teachers, from our parents, from our friends, and in our generation, we are enriching that, right? We are adding number of new vocabulary. Selfie, that's a new vocabulary, right? We have added that. ROFL, what do you mean by that? Rolling on the floor laughing, right? So that's a new vocabulary which we have added it. So we have enriched this and we are passing it on to the next generation. This is one aspect of culture. Similarly, the dress which we wear. Being a Mowgli inside a jungle, in a single generation, it is not possible for someone to learn the art of raising a cotton crop, extracting lint out of it, making it a fiber, weaving it, and stitching it into a dress. So over a few thousand years, right, our ancestors, they used their knowledge to know how to extract the fiber with which you can make this dress. So generation after generation, we kept enriching this, right? See, the jeans, pant, see how fast culture is evolving, which we are wearing, right? Some 20 years back, most of the jeans used to be very tough and rough. And most of the time, right, after 1 year of use, we'll feel that, so this is very tough, man, I'm not going to wear this. But nowadays, we are getting ultra soft jeans in most of the brands, right? Be it Levi's or in any brand, we are getting ultra soft jeans now. See how things are evolving. So same is the case, right? Over few thousand years, the art of making the dress, it got evolved over time. And we borrowed this technique from our previous generation. And in our generation, what we are doing, how we are improving it, how we are enriching it. We don't know what to do. So we are tearing it here, tearing it here, tearing it here. And we are enriching it and we are passing it on to the next generation, right? So this is culture. Culture is learned. One cannot make their own culture. So the main theme of anthropology is study of human culture. Study of human culture. Okay. And in this process, right, we want to understand human beings. So what was the condition of our past? Maybe some few hundred years back, few thousand years back, how we were like. So how to understand that? There are a number of contemporary societies who still live in a very primitive way. Can somebody tell me about any one particular tribe who still live in lithic culture? Lithic culture means who used stone predominantly, who didn't use metal. Hope you might have heard about the sentinels of Andaman and Nicobar group of islands. They are in Andaman Islands, North Sentinel and South Sentinel Island. You haven't heard about them. They are still unexplored, and that is a protected territory, and nobody can venture into that territory. There was only one Bengali anthropologist, one Chattopadhyay, one lady who somehow managed to venture there. And he managed to enter into that island, and she even managed to click some photos with them. And she was so friendly, and the people, we don't know how they accepted her. And second time, when she planned to go there, few people were ready to welcome her. At the same time, there were few who pointed an arrow towards her. They somehow, their own people, right, they forced them, please, please, please stop, do not do that, do not do that. She is our friend. But she was, that was the class of anthropologists. We'll discuss about number of anthropologists who had to risk their life to study the primitive culture. Recently, some 4 or 5 years, there was one American. We don't know how he got motivated. He was so desperate to reach this island. The local officials and even the fishermen there, they said, sir, we don't have permit to even go near to the island. We cannot go there. We cannot go there. But this guy, what he did, he hired one boat, and reports say that he even bought that boat from them. He paid the full amount, you give me the boat, and he went there near the island. He was just some 50 meters away from the coast. We don't know from which direction arrows came, and he died in this spot. They are the only living Paleolithic people in the world, actually. They still live in Stone Age. And their population now is not more than 50 or 60, somewhere around 50 years. We don't have any census record. And when tsunami struck that island, right, our administrators there, they expected that almost all the sentinels might have got washed away in the tsunami. But to the surprise, there was not even a single casualty. People who live there in the nature, right, they know how to deal with all these natural calamities. Okay, so as I told you, culture is the main theme in anthropology. At the same time, right, we are also studying human beings through time, how we evolved over time. So there is a need to understand biology also, human biology also. Then only we can understand, right, how we got evolved, how we got erect posture. Of all the animals on the earth, right, it's only we human beings who have a stable bipedal locomotion. Yes or no? Of all the animals on the earth, it is we human beings, right, who have extraordinary cranial capacity with respect to our body size. And there are something unique to human beings. It's only human beings, right, who marry. Is there any other animals who marry? There was one ruler in Junagadh during the partition time, right? He was busy siding with Pakistan, but he got a very strong communication from the Indian side that we will arrange a safe passage for you. Please leave our country and you go to Pakistan. That guy, right? He had only one request from the Indian government then. Sir, I'm ready to go to Pakistan, but please arrange me one train. I have few hundred dogs in my palace. I want to carry all the dogs back to Pakistan. What he used to do, he used to conduct marriage for the dogs, it seems. And for that, he used to print a very costly invitation. He used to invite guests. But these are strange examples. Apart from that, this institution of marriage, family, all these things are unique only to human beings. Have you heard about any other animals which marry? No idea. Anybody from Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab here. Nobody from this North Indian belt. This Rajasthan. I won't ask you any tough question, man, please. There is one bird called as Sarus crane. Have you heard about the bird Sarus crane? Very tall bird that is. In fact, that is the tallest of all birds. That is a migrant during winter season. We can see them in Bharatpur, in parts of Rajasthan, and also in Western UP. These birds are known for lifetime pairing. If a male bird pairs with one female bird, right, they will live together for lifetime. Apart from that, this institution of marriage is not found among any animals. Why it is specific only to human beings? Why? Any idea? Why human beings alone marry? Social? It's a social construct. Why do we have that social construct? In every known society, right, the institution of marriage is there. The problem is there are too many biological problems we have actually. Human brain, right, that cranial capacity is close to around 1500 cc, cubic centimeters. For our body volume, right, this is so enormous. It is so enormous. If you compare a similar primate like chimpanzee or gorilla, their cranial capacity will be just 1/3 the size of human brain. On this large brain, right, it matures very, very slowly. Have you ever seen a cow giving birth to a young calf? See that newly born one, right? You should have seen this, right? How many of you have seen this? Fantastic, you have seen this. See, 5 minutes, right, it will be there on the ground, that newborn one. Its mother will keep licking it. And in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, it will try to stand. And in half an hour, it will start running. Yes or no? Suppose if it gets separated from its mother, is it possible for that newborn one to survive? It can survive, right? It can survive. Only there are very few animals which cannot survive this separation. Elephants find it very difficult to survive. Actually, there are a few other interesting stories of forest guards rescuing one baby elephant that I'll tell you later. But what about the human condition? At the time of birth, right, both the mother as well as the newborn kid will be in such a helpless condition. Correct? Even the neck muscles will not be stable. The sutures in the head, right, will not close. If you keep the hand in the head of the kid, right, we can still feel the opening here in the top of the head, because that sutures will not close immediately. It is meant for giving some flexibility to the bones here so that delivery will be a bit easy. Okay. Then even after that, right, at least for 3 months, the way in which one should hold the baby, right, that itself is something, a skilled activity. They need to hold in such a way that the neck will not get affected. It will take 3 or 4 months for the neck to get stabilized. Then how long will it take for this individual to survive alone? 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Nowadays, in the name of pampering the kid, right, even after they getting married, we are not allowing them to go free, right? So prolonged infant dependency. This is one very big issue for which, right, we have human beings have introduced culture as well as the institution of marriage. So who is going to take responsibility of the newborn as well as the mother who is not so well? Next, we have other problems. Fight for sex is common in all the animals. Yes or no? Do donkeys fight? Do dogs fight? Buffaloes fight? What about human beings? They fight or not? Of course, right. The most deadly battles in the world were fought because of women only. You know, right, the very famous Trojan War. What about Ramayana? It's all because of a single lady, right? So, can you count the number of casualties Human beings also fight for sex. Unlike other animals, human beings are capable of making tools and weapons. And if this fight is allowed to continue, it will be very lethal, right? It will put an end to humankind itself. So that's why this is one important reason again why we have the institution of marriage. Then we make property. We need to find ways in which the property gets inherited. If one do not have the institution of marriage, and if one person gets married to, or if he has an affair with 10 other women, and once when he dies, then all his kids will start fighting for the property, right? Once again, there will be disharmony in the society. And like our student said, it is for this right we had this social construct, or this culture called as, or this cultural institution called as marriage. And to understand about this institution, unlike other subjects, the interesting thing in anthropology is the focus is much on the primitive people, the so-called tribal people, the so-called people who live in the remote, isolated places. Got it? In that process, right, we will be exposed to a number of institutions which actually makes this subject very, very interesting. Is there anybody from Manipur here? Fantastic. Have you heard about a tribe called as Kuki of Manipur? Among the Kukis of Manipur, there is one institution. See how great these people are. Everyone wants their kids to be happy, right? See, if here one boy proposes a girl, he will not propose the girl. In fact, he'll go and ask her dad, uncle, I want to marry your daughter. And he will say, wait, let me ask my daughter. And if she agrees, right, then they'll say, yes, my daughter is agreeing. You both live together for 2 months, just like husband and wife. There are no restrictions. So after 2 months, you come and report us. Have you heard about the institution? No. The culture is vanishing, changing fast. There are many such institutions which are fast disappearing. Okay. Even there are number of such institutions in the so-called Central Indian Tribal Belt, Orissa, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, this area where we had youth dormitories, where people of same age group, right, they live together. And after 2 months, right, that girl need to report saying, Dad, I'm okay with this guy. He's keeping me very happy. He's so kind, affectionate. I can go ahead with the marriage. On the other hand, if she says, no, Dad, this guy is like a sadist. He keeps beating me. He is abusing me. He's not treating me properly. Then they will not go ahead with the marriage. And for the 2 months that guy spent there, right, he need to pay compensation and he can leave. Like that, there are hundreds of institutions. There is one such thing we discuss in culture. So we are not just going to discuss marriage alone in the primitive people's point of view. We'll also discuss the institution of religion. In religion, right, we will not discuss much about the religious philosophy here. We're not going to read Bhagavad Gita or Old Testament, etc. We are just going to read the forms of religion in primitive societies. What made human beings to believe in religion, believe in supernatural power, and how many forms are there among the primitive people? Why do they believe in this? Why do they believe in this? Correct. Then we also discuss about the economic aspect, political aspect, most of them in the primitive people's point of view. Then I told you about biology, right? That is something which really creates fear for people who had no knowledge about science. And even if you have a good idea about science, right, oh my God, just looking at that, right, people will feel, what is this? I'm not just going to take this subject. Suppose if you are even a biology graduate, right, the syllabus was designed in such a way that whoever goes through it, right, in the first 2-3 paragraphs, they feel, my God, this is not something which we are going to read. I'll tell you, technically they have made it to discourage people from taking this optional because it's a very big halo. And it is so interesting, I'll tell you, if you read this subject with a passion, it will just change the way in which we look at the society and all the prejudices which we have, right? At least that will not be there after that. For example, in North India, If you look at some South Indian eating rice using their hand, right, you'll feel so disgusting, right? What is this? He is using rice, he is using his hand to eat rice. Can't he use a spoon? Yes or no? But it is their food. Few thousand years, right, they are eating rice. They only know how to eat that. So that is a part of their culture. When from your point of view, when you view that as something disgusting, right, that we call it as ethnocentrism. But culture we need to view from people's point of view. That is the main theme in anthropology, okay? So in the very front page, right, to discourage people from taking this optional subject, few topics are mentioned, like primate taxonomy. How many of you have, see, during your school days, you might have read at least a little bit of taxonomy, right? So in botany alone, I'll tell you, in schools, I think you may study some 4 or 5 families, that's it. But at graduation level, there will be close to around 20-25 families. Then in zoology, in entomology alone, right, we have close to around 28 orders, study of insects, 28 orders. And then at least 5 or 6 families under each order. Then genus, species, the scientific name. The word taxonomy, that is sufficient for people who have science knowledge to avoid this subject. But in reality, in anthropology, we are not just going to discuss taxonomy in detail. It is just a single page where we will be discussing the position of human beings in the animal kingdom. So where we are placed. So what you mean by hominidae, what you mean by hominidae, so how we are related to chimpanzee, gorilla, that's it. It's just a single page, just a single page. And then immediately below that, comparative anatomy of man and apes. Even people who did their medical sciences, right, they'll feel, what is this? How tough we found it to finish this human anatomy. Now once again we need to read ape anatomy, primate anatomy to compare this. When people from medical sciences, when they feel like that, think about people who do not have knowledge in science. But in reality, I will tell you, it is people from commerce background, people from arts background, right? They score more marks than people from science background. But in reality, we are not going to discuss the entire aspect of human anatomy here. In fact, this is the thing which is really, really very, very interesting. It's all depends upon the skill of the teacher once again. I'll tell you one good example. If you ask a drunkard, 2 by 3, 3 by 4, which is more? You may get confused, right? With the same person you ask him, 3 fulls are there, we will divide that into 2, which one you want? Or 4 fulls are there, we divide it into 3. Immediately he'll calculate, right, which one will be greater. It all depends upon the skill actually. And this human, see, we will not discuss entire human anatomy here. So we will be discussing anatomy only in the evolutionary perspective. There are hardly some 20 or 25 anatomical terms which we will be discussing. And here there is a bit of difficulty for people to do self-study, because one need to understand whether a particular term is a technical term, or whether you need to construct an anatomical meaning or just a literary meaning. For example, there are terms like condyloid process, coronoid process. So process, what do you mean by process here? So process in anatomy means it is a protrusion of any bone or a muscle from a larger mass. So if there is a larger mass, and if something protrudes from here, right, we call it as a process. Okay. And in anthropology, we discuss some 25 to 30 maximum anatomical features, which shows prominent evolutionary trend. For example, our backbone, vertebral column. So some few million years back, our ancestors had a single arched vertebral column. How many arches do we have? This multiple arched, right? It used to be like this. Multiple arched vertebral column. That is a weight-bearing modification. This lower jaw, right, for the primitive apes, it used to be large and massive, because they were forced to eat raw meat. They need to bite and chew that. In the course of evolution, once when we started using fire, then the need for that excessive mastication, right, biting and chewing, it declined. In the process, right, this lower jaw became smaller, thinner, but stiffer and stronger. See, these phones now, how thin it is. Some 20 years back, the same mobile phone, right, used to be like this. Correct? And if you drop it, that's it. We cannot use it again. See, in the course of evolution, see, it became very thinner now. Many a times, right, out of anger, people in my home, right, want to show anger on me. They used to take this phone, they used to throw it on the wall. It happened many times, but nothing happened. So similarly, right, in the course of evolution, even there are a number of modifications in our bone. Few bones become thinner and stiffer. Few bones become extra stronger. Okay. So this is what we discuss in human anatomy here. And this is one particular thing, right, which is so interesting that it is knowing our own biology, knowing something about ourselves, right? This coupled with archaeological anthropology, where even in history we'll be discussing this Paleolithic culture, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Chalcolithic, right? But there it will be like reading a data. Here, we'll just make you to understand how the socio-economic transformation of the society, how it took place along with the environmental changes, and how culture also kept changing along with this environmental change. So in all right, this is an interesting subject, and our examiner right to hide the weakness in the subject, they have followed one simple technique. Okay, confuse the syllabus. Do not arrange it in a proper order, just confuse it and keep it down. So that is sufficient. I'll tell you one good example. In the very first chapter, chapter number 1, right? First one, meaning, scope and development of anthropology. Then number 2 is comparison of anthropology or relationship of anthropology with other disciplines. Comparison with the medical sciences, humanities, life sciences, etc., art sciences, etc. You do not know what is anthropology. Then how you can compare this with other subject, medical sciences, with humanities, right? So once when you are done with anthropology, then you will be in a position to understand. There is no need to read anything. Straight away you will be in a position to write answers for this. Same is the case actually when we have the physical anthropology in part 2. Intentionally they have kept a few topics in paper 1. For example, the study of apes. And if somebody wants to do self-study, right, that is sufficient to ruin their entire preparation because they cannot start there and finish that. Same is the case with culture theories. So once when we follow a particular pattern, once we are capable of arranging things in order, that is sufficient to master the subject. Okay. So as we are running short of time, right, I do not have, see generally this workshop, I used to teach for hours together with 2 hours, 3 hours continuously. But in a matter of half an hour or 45 minutes, right, I don't think I have expressed properly. But still we'll be having continuous session where we'll discuss what this subject is, how interesting the subject is. Okay, and there is one important reason why the subject is scoring. There are hardly 40 or 42 universities where we have anthropology as a discipline. We cannot find anthropology in ordinary arts colleges. We have only handful of experts here. And even these people, right, their subject knowledge is really, as it is recorded right down. But one thing very honestly I can say, when compared to other subjects, we don't have experts here. Even the so-called experts in anthropology now, right, they are very good in socio-cultural part. And physical anthropology is one area, right, where nobody is doing, there is no much of research going on. Archaeological anthropology, nil. Okay, there are archaeologists who are doing it, not our anthropologists. Correct? So this gives one very big advantage because this is the only subject where amateurs are going to set the question paper and the same amateurs are going to evaluate the paper. Here lies the very big advantage. So most of the people, if they ask you 2 minus 1 is equal to 1, right? If you write 1, your examiner will be happy. Or once again, if you write 3 minus 2, he will be happy. But people from science background, from medical professions, from medical sciences, right? In order to impress the examiner, you know what they will do? 2 minus 1 is equal to, they will write x dx. This is also equal to 1, right? Or if they need to write 2, they will write x dx minus y dy. This is equal to 2. For our poor examiner who stopped studying science at metric level, right? For the next 20 or 25 years, he'll be dealing with society, culture, caste system, tribal studies. And suddenly if you ask them, just show something like this, right? In physical anthropology, for him, he'll want, is this in English or in Mandarin? Which language is written this thing? And this may be an extraordinary answer if somebody from Cornell University or somebody from Harvard is going to evaluate a paper, right? They'll give you extraordinary marks. But this is one reason why people having very good science knowledge, right, they tend to score very poor in anthropology. On the other hand, people from commerce background, right, or arts background, they'll just follow whatever we speak. They will not do our work. And they tend to get very good mark in the subject. So let me ask the Kavitha ma'am to come and continue.
I hope sir has given you a very detailed introduction about what is anthropology, how to go ahead with the preparation, what makes anthropology all the more interesting, isn't it? Yes. So how many of you all have heard about anthropology even prior to beginning your civil services journey? Very few of you all, right? So it's a very unpopular subject, but however, from UPSC point of view, it's a very highly scoring subject, isn't it? And as and how you start reading the subject, you will become all the more interested, and many of our students have even gone ahead with pursuing masters and even PhD in anthropology, just out of passion. So that is how anthropology is. So along with sir, I will be discussing majority of tribal studies in paper 2, Indian society and culture, and also most of the genetics topics in paper 1, right? Tribal studies. So how many of you all have any idea about what tribes are? Fine. So don't worry, that is why we are all here, right? We'll study. So we have majority of the tribes distributed in northeastern part, central Indian belt, and even in Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep Islands, all these regions, isn't it? So tribal studies. In tribal studies, we'll be discussing a lot about the tribal culture, their religion, their belief in myth, magic, what are the problems of the tribal population, and why is it becoming increasingly difficult to rehabilitate and resettle the tribes, right? So many a times you would have noticed that in newspapers you get news that so many tribes are protesting against this, that, because they are unhappy with whatever the government has offered and all these things. So there have been various case studies which we will be discussing as part of this also. So overall, if I have to tell you, anthropology is a subject which will totally change your perspective towards not just the tribal population, but towards various things in the society. We'll become more and more less judgmental, right? How easily, how coolly we judge people, isn't it? Based on the language they speak, based on their looks, based on their background, based on what, we have hundreds of things to judge people, isn't it? But when we start studying anthropology, we altogether, our personality itself changes towards how we view everything else around us, okay? Not just the tribal population or the society as a whole, how we look at people from different it might be different regions or localities or different cultures especially. That is what that is the crux of anthropology, that is ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Ethnocentrism means looking at a culture from the person who is studying that. That is, I look at others' culture from my point of view, from where I come from. Whereas cultural relativism is the highlight of anthropology. It says that do not look at a culture from your own biases. Look at a culture as an insider, as a person who belongs to that culture, right? So say some of us will be vegetarians, some of us will be non-vegetarians, right? You know, some people will have some kind of different opinion about people who consume certain kinds of food, isn't it? But we need to understand that every part of culture is an adaptation, isn't it? According to environmental anthropologists, culture is nothing but an adaptation to the environment. So now you can see in Delhi from last 1 week it's scorching like anything, right? It's around 43 degrees Celsius. So at this, with this kind of environment, what kind of clothes can you wear? Just basic simple cotton t-shirts, pants, light, anything, any light wear, right? Whereas during December, it will be very cold and you're forced to wear thick, heavy clothes, right? So it is an adaptation, that the culture is nothing but an adaptation to a environment. So you can expect some person who is living in a, in South India or in Bangalore where it's relatively cold, we can still follow vegetarian diet and still be happy, right? Whereas you cannot expect a person, an Eskimo, who's living in the cold region, cold climatic conditions where hardly there's any vegetation, where there's no scope of growing any food. So in those regions, it is an environmental compulsion for him to consume non-vegetarian food, right? So like this, we will learn so many things about the things which are around us, and that is what makes anthropology so interesting. So anthropology is the study of humankind. It's the study of us. We are studying about ourselves. So can there be anything much more interesting than studying about us, right? Here we are not studying human beings from one single perspective, like say doctors, they study only the physiology, right? Psychologists study the mind, sociologists study the society. Like this, each discipline studies human beings from only one perspective, from one angle, whereas it is only we anthropologists who have a holistic study or holistic view towards human beings. We study society, right? We have sociocultural anthropology, wherein we discuss about the society like marriage, family, kinship, economic anthropology, political anthropology, all of this. Then we also study the physiological part, which Sir has already told. We study about evolution of human beings, right from Australopithecus up to now Homo sapiens sapiens. So we study human beings both time and space, how we have evolved from different, from the earliest form to the present form in both time and space. And that is one important evolutionary aspect which we will be discussing here. However, if you ask me what's the difference between the sociology and anthropology, many students come up with this doubt. Here you need to understand that in anthropology, it is more skewed towards the study of the tribal population. So in paper 2, almost 50% of the syllabus is about tribal population, and it is very, very interesting, right? So there were these, I can give you an example. So there were these Central Indian tribes like the Malpahariyas, Birhors, Birjias, and some more, and they were moved into a resettlement colony. And after some time, when the people went there to analyze what is the progress of this, whether people are happy over there, what happened after the resettlement, they found that most of them had vacated that place and moved to other regions. So there were various reasons. So in that case study, our Upadhyay discusses entirely about what were the different reasons for the different tribal communities to vacate that place, even though they were given very good houses with thatched roof, community living, everything. They had vacated that place within few, not even months, within few weeks, and they fled to other regions. So what was exactly the reason? So they went and interviewed them and found out what were the reasons. So if I tell you any of these reasons, for us, it might seem, it might really seem like very silly or very simple reasons. Just like how we say when kids, they start crying for no reason at all. We think how stupid they are. How can they, cry for such simple things? That is how we will find it. But when we understand it from their perspective, from their attachment towards their belief, religion, customs and traditions, then only we will understand how important it is to them. So out of these tribes, like all these 4 tribes, that is the Birjias, Malpahariyas, Birhors, Baijias, all of them, few of them who were interviewed, they gave up the reasons. So one of them said that they have a cultural practice of, in one of these tribes, they follow, I'm just telling you, I'm not telling you, if I have to explain the entire case study, it will take another 1 hour. So I'll have to finish in another 5 minutes. So I'll just give you a crux of what happened. So one of the tribe complained that according to their belief, after a woman gives birth to a child, she cannot use the same entrance as that of the other members of the family. So traditionally, when they were living inside the forest, they had huts which had 2 doors. So rest of the family members would use one door, and the woman who has just given birth to the child, she would use the other door. Whereas here in the resettlement colony, it was just common one house with a single door. So they found it is against their belief or ritual system, right? And there is another among these, one more tribe complained that they have this practice of pollution and purity rituals which they perform after childbirth. You must have heard of these purification and pollution rituals, right? Even it happens commonly whenever there's a death of a person in the family. For 1 week or so, usually the family does not consume non-vegetarian food, and for after 10 days they will have some puja rituals and all, and only after that the entire community will assemble, they have some rituals going on, all this. Similarly, they have this ritual that up to 6 months after a childbirth, the woman is not supposed to stay in the common house with the rest of the others. She will have a separate house outside the main house wherein she will stay, and this was not possible in the resettlement colony, right. So there was one more reason. So the tribes had the belief that if there is a window in the house, it is an entry point for the spirits, evil spirits. So they were not happy with that. They were used to living in the jungles with a house which had only a single door without any windows. But here the houses had windows too. So they believed it will bring in evil spirits, and they vacated the colony. Then still like this, there are many more reasons. So they cannot follow the pollution and purification rituals, because when and also some of them have the belief that if a death of the person happens in their tanda is the small group, okay, we will be discussing more about that. They believe that it is a sign of omen or bad evil. So they will vacate that place and move to a new place. But here in the resettlement colonies, they do not have such possibilities. So like this, many different reasons. So when we as outsiders, when we look at this, we might find that okay, these are very simple reasons, right, but it is a very essential part of their tradition, belief, culture. Similarly, we will be discussing more about their religion, animism, animatism, manaism, Ho-Bongaism. So what is manaism? Manaism means belief in mana. So they have the belief that if any animate or inanimate object, like it might be a living thing or a non-living thing, it might be a priest, it might be a lion or a tiger or a rock or a tree, they believe that that particular object, it might be a pen which I have here, anything. So if I believe that this pen has some supernatural powers, that is called as manaism. I start worshipping this, right. So like this, we will be discussing a lot about tribal religion, what are the problems of them, like illiteracy, unemployment, right. So we will be discussing more about each and every tribal culture and how the various religions have impacted the tribal population. So we know the religions which had their origin in our country, right, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. So how each of these religions have contributed to the welfare of the tribal population, that is how they have impacted them, right. Similarly, we will also discuss the impact of all of these religions on the Indian society as well, right. Then we will also be discussing how they have impacted the tribal culture. So you can see most of the northeastern tribes, they have been converted to Christianity, right, and the contribution of Christianity in terms of education and the hospitality sector, that is in the medical field, it is enormous, right, to the Indian society also. So we will be discussing more about how each of these religions have impacted not just our Indian society, but the tribal population as a whole. So tribal studies and overall anthropology is a very good interesting subject which will make you study more and more and more, right. Do we have any queries? Yeah.
Can you shed some light on the topic of genetics and what all that will cover?
Okay, so it's a common question. Many students have this doubt that we have studied only up to 10th standard. Okay, we have studied science only up to 10th standard. After that, we switched over to commerce or arts, right? So is it feasible for us to take up science and study? So let me tell you this, no matter if you have studied 10th standard science and you know, even if you forgotten it, don't worry. Okay, I will be beginning, we have a chapter on, right from cell. So I will be beginning with what is a cell, what are the different cell organelles, what is DNA, double helical structure of DNA. So in genetics also, we will not be going too much into depth of anything, understand. Here we are not studying BSc genetics or MSc genetics, or we are not taking up UPSC optional of botany or zoology. It is anthropology, right. So here we need to know science from the aspect of like a arts person, like a student from arts background. That is all the amount of science you need to know. Still I will be beginning with all these basic things, which definitely you need to know at least for your GS also, if not for anthropology, right. So even science you will be studying basic up to cell division and all these things even for your GS, right. So we will be discussing right from there, and even the topics, as I told you, I have a MSc in biotechnology and an MA in anthropology. So if you ask me about this genetics and biotechnology topics, I can teach you right from the molecular level. like say for example transcription or translation, protein synthesis, or genetic imprints in human disease, I can teach you right at the from the molecular level, but that is for what for MSc or BSc standards. But here we will be discussing it in very, very simple terms. Say I can give you the example of genetic imprints in human disease. We have a topic called as genetic imprints in human disease. So here what do we mean by genetic imprints? We all know that we get genes from our parents, right, from a father and mother. Totally how many chromosomes do we have in our body? 23 pairs, right. So out of which 22 pairs are autosomes or body chromosomes, and 1 pair is the sex chromosome. So in males the sex chromosome is X and Y, and in females it is X and X, right. So in females 1X comes from the father and 1X comes from the mother, and in men the X chromosome comes from mother and Y chromosome comes from father, right. So every single characteristic of whatever we have, be it our height, our hair texture, the length of our nose, our skin color, the diseases which we inherit, the characters, traits, all of this is because of the genes which we inherit from our parents, right. Similarly, the genes are also responsible for causing the diseases in us, right, genetic disorders, whatever, even diabetes and all these things, right, lifestyle related disorders also. Still, if your parents are having diabetes, there is a very high possibility of you getting diabetes at an earlier age, isn't it? So genetic imprints means the expression of the genes varies according to the parent from whom the gene is coming. So I will give you the example of a disease, Huntington chorea. So do you all know what is Huntington chorea? No, you can in the class I will share you a video of that. So Huntington's chorea is a neurodegenerative disorder. So wherein the person doesn't have any control over his limbs. What happens is he keeps making jerky body movements, his legs, hands, body, like how you and me, you people are sitting over here. If you just make a person who is suffering from Huntington's chorea to sit on a chair, he cannot sit idle over there. Without his action or without his control, his body keeps moving. He will appear like as though he is doing break dance. And some of us might even assume that probably he is drunk. If it's in the late evening and he is walking on a street, we might think, okay, probably he is high, that is why he is behaving like that. No, that is not the case. So Huntington's chorea is a neurodegenerative disorder where the person makes jerky body movements. So this is a disease which we can inherit from our parents. So if the genes for this disease comes from your mother, right? So if the gene comes from your father or from your mother, you can still get this disease. If you inherit the gene from your mother, the possibility of you getting the disease is around the age of 60 to 65 years. Okay. If you get the same genes from your father, the possibility of you getting the disease is around the age of 40 to 45 years. Okay, the disease is the same, the severity of the disease is the same, but the expression of the gene varies according to which parent you are getting the gene from. Got it? So if you are getting the gene from your mother, you will get it at a later age, around 60 to 65 years. Whereas if you are getting it from your father, you will get the disease at an earlier age of 40 to 45 years. So now you might ask me, why is it so, ma'am? It's the same genes, you are getting the same disease. So how is it that mothers are so kind, they are giving you the disease at a later age and fathers are giving it to you so early? That's because of a process called as DNA methylation, right? So here DNA methylation itself is a separate topic which we studied during our MSc, and you can, it is again, if you study that, it will go on for a 4 to 5 hour lecture. Here we will not be discussing DNA methylation so much in depth. Got? So DNA methylation means addition of the methyl group. Methyl group means CH3, right? Addition of the methyl group to the DNA. So that DNA methylation is the process which is responsible for this differential expression of the gene. Got it? So the differential expression of the gene based on which parent we are inheriting the gene from. Okay. So like this I will be discussing DNA methylation in just 2-3 steps, what exactly happens. So like this very briefly we will be studying genetics part also, and none of you all have to fear about the biology part especially. Okay, most students are very cool and comfortable with the other sections, okay, like Indian society or tribal studies, and even evolutionary part, apes also, Australopithecus, like sir would have said, there are few anatomical terms. We need not study. There is one chapter which says comparison between humans and apes. So that doesn't mean we sit and compare them inch to inch. It is just the evolutionary characteristics which has changed. This is how we will be discussing, and you need not worry about biology at all. We will not go too much into technical things because here we are not studying MSc, right? Any more queries? Done? Shall we wind up? Yeah. Pardon? We will be giving you a book list, and what I will tell you is usually everybody, as soon as they say anthropology, they say buy Ember and start reading it. Please do not do that mistake. It's so complicated. What we will suggest is just attend the classes. We will begin. See, we will not straight away begin from complicated things. We begin from the simple chapters and we will build on. So as in how we complete the topics in the class, we will be giving you a handout. You can read it, and along with that we will be suggesting books for physical anthropology, for apes part, and for Indian anthropology, tribal studies. All of this we will be giving you a book list. So you can just, even after we give you the book list, you can just buy those textbooks and keep it with you. Please do not start reading immediately. It will make it very much complicated. What we suggest is first attend the classes. We will give you the handouts. Read the handouts again and again 2-3 times. You will get a hang over the subject and the topic which we have discussed. Then if you read the textbooks or any other sources, you will be able to follow properly. And many of the students, they come out with notes of toppers and all these things, right? I'll tell you, there's no dearth of material for any subject now, be it online, offline. Earlier it was like if you need good quality materials, we had to travel from anywhere to to Delhi, or we would ask our friends to send it by post and all that. But now that is not the case. You get it everywhere. There is so much of material, and we have also identified so many mistakes also, right? So not just in these materials, even in textbooks, even in peanut physical anthropology, there are so many mistakes which I rectify when I teach in class. Got it? So when we are discussing this pedigree analysis, the charts had, I think now the revised version doesn't have much mistakes, but earlier last 3-4 versions back, those had huge number of mistakes. So when I teach in the class, I'll also tell you, when you are reading this book, make this correction in the textbook also. Got it? So you can read the material which we give, you read it n number of times. Attend the class, you read the material again and again and again, you will get a very good clarity on the topic. Then if you read other materials or any other textbooks or any other material from any sources, you will be able to understand better. Anything else? How long is the course? Okay. See, 2.5 months, 2-3 months is a comfortable time, and I can tell you, as and how we teach in class, you can also finish anthropology during that duration. It's not like other optionals which are very lengthy. You will take some 6 months to do the first reading, and then again for revision you take much more time. Whereas anthropology is not like that. Within 2.5 months, very comfortably, as in how we teach, you can finish. Then within 1 month, you can do at least one more revision, and next revision won't even take 50 days. So if we begin in now June 27, July, August, yeah, around 2.5 months is sufficient time to complete. 2.5 to 3 months. It's a very good time, provided we don't get much holidays, and no, I hope so we won't have any more lockdowns. Okay, thank you.